Well, for the past 20 years now, even over 20 years, I have been working to help young people all over the world now to write, design, and publish original comic books as a pathway to literacy, creativity, community building, social development, all with the opportunity for young people to create a comic book from scratch, an original comic book, one that's often based on a theme, whether it's the environment or leadership or community, and to share those ideas and to share that art and to share that writing with a broader community. And to help what the literacy educator Lucy Calkins says, to help young people enter the elite world of authorship, to be able to publish and present something that is from your mind, from your pen, and to share it with others in your community. And now with digital platforms all around the world can be a truly powerful experience, and one that we have really been trying to advocate in the comic book project. This program started in New York City with one school, and over the last 10 years especially, we've gone international with our first Spanish language comic book project in Mexico through support from the US State Department, Kazakhstan in 2018, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. And so we've been bringing the idea of original comics all over the world, and it's been an incredible journey, and I'm happy to share some of those experiences with you tonight. Well, as you have seen with most of the pictures that I've presented so far, we've been primarily working with educators and youth who are in middle school and younger. But the story I'm going to talk about tonight is from our first high school program in New York City. And we were approached by an after-school director to bring the comic book project to a group of high school youth. And I just want to point out where this high school is. It's on 66 in Amsterdam. It's called Martin Luther King High School, or it was at the time. Now it's been broken up into many different high schools, with each high school taking a floor of the large building. But it's catty corner to a very well-known high school in New York City called LaGuardia High School for Music and Art. This high school has graduated some of the most well-known musicians, dancers, writers, artists, and so on. So it's somewhat ironic to me that the amazing art and amazing writing that was produced in this project that I'll share with you came from not from LaGuardia, but from another high school, MLK, which had been really been plagued by news stories about violence in the school, low test scores, low performance scores. So it's an unlikely candidate for such amazing artwork and incredible manga. So when I visited the high school for the first time to meet the youth, these are some of the artworks that I saw in the student sketchbooks. I was really impressed by the quality of the art, but of course, I was so amazed by that this Japanese influenced art and writing and storytelling was produced by young people who had no real other connection to Japan in their lives. MLK did not have Japanese students in the high school, and the youth who were involved in the program didn't have Japanese families in their communities. Their parents didn't, take them to Japan on business trips. And so an unlikely connection to Japanese art, culture, history, and the land of Japan itself. These young people were so dedicated to drawing manga, to writing manga, and of course to reading manga and sharing it with each other across a wide variety of platforms, printed books, digital. They would take over the Barnes and Noble on 66 and Broadway, if you've ever been there, and they would just line the aisles with their book bags and just devour the manga that was being produced on a weekly basis, much to the chagrin of the bookstore owner. They would sort of just land there after school and take over. If they weren't creating their own manga, they were reading manga. And I came to know them as absolute scholars. They were so immersed in what was current, where the history had been. And they were developing their own manga that was very much influenced by the stories and the art that they were reading. They were most impressed with the manga produced in Japan, and that was what they really wanted to consume when they visited that Barnes and Noble. So we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on one student, and we'll take a look at her original manga comic. And this high schooler's name is Sama, short for Samantha. And here's just a little scene excerpt from her sketchbook, which I thought I would share with you because she was such a really incredible artist and a really strong writer, but she always put herself down. She was always putting herself down at the club. And in her sketchbook, you can see some of the things that she would write about herself: a few crayons short of a box, the meaning of idiot, obviously needs spell check, not the brightest bulb in a chandelier. And I was always trying to tell her, try to turn those things around and treat yourself more kindly. But it was sort of just part of her attitude, but it was also part of the situation that she was in terms of the high school that she was attending, and I'll share some of that with you at the end of the presentation. Sama was also something of an entrepreneur, and so she would create original chibi characters, little cute manga characters that she would actually sell to her friends, or she even had fans on DeviantArt. And so you can see her little handmade flyer for her original chibi chess pieces, less detailed chibis, a detailed one, or a whole page of chibis for $10. And I'm not really sure how much money she made, but she was really trying to think of herself as a professional manga creator and really aspired to share her manga with the entire world. Okay, so we're going to take a look at her creation. The title is Anime Con Blues. I once had a Spanish teacher say, "Oh, it's anime with blues, like, a sad anime story." But no, that's actually a misinterpretation. It's Anime Con, like a Comic Con, a convention. And this is a story that happened, I want to say to her, but she actually said it was happened to a friend of hers. But I kind of think it happened to Sama herself. We can make a decision at the end of it. It is a very intriguing and engaging story, and brilliant cover. I really believe that Sama and the rest of the crew at MLK had really refined design skills, very highly artistic skills. Well, of course, they're not perfect and maybe not professional. They're getting there, and I think that the time that they spent creating the manga, and of course also reading manga, brought them to a very high level of artistry and creation. All right, I have each of the pages here, but I've blown up the panel so we can really check them out and read them. So one says, "Hi, my name's Samantha, otherwise named Sama. I'm 17 years old. I'm crazy about art, love J-rock and J-pop." So this could be a whole study in youth culture, which I know that Hiromi and CJ will go further into. My most interesting aspect, besides my insane cosplaying, dressing up as her favorite characters at conventions, would be my weird, mixed up, out of the norm life. I'll tell you my most recent mix up. And I'd like to insert flashback now. Lots of really nice design elements, very much in the manga style. Let's find out what happens. All right, so there's Sama in cosplay, dressed up as her favorite character. And there's a voice from off the panel. Excuse me, miss. She turns around and says, "Hmm?" Well, it all started that first day of my first anime convention. There she is, and you can see she's kind of stunned right there. What does she see? Here's the next page. Well, she sees a really cute guy, and the character says, "You must be Sama. I'm so happy to have found you this early," meaning this early in the convention. And that's when I first met, rather in person, him. Well, where else would she have met him if not in person? Well, the answer would be online. She and the rest of the group spent a lot of time online, communicating on different platforms, different discussion boards, talking about manga, meeting other people online, other manga scholars and fans. And then when they came together at conventions, they would meet each other in person and make a real human connection that way. All right, OMG, he was really a Bishonen, um, and a really cute guy, a really hot guy, somebody you'd want to hang out. And she says, "Wow." Well, I love her little conscience there saying, "Dear, he's only cosplaying. Don't take it too seriously." But she's smitten. "Come on, let me show you around," he says. Oh, okay. He was really kind, generous, a real gentleman. We were really fast friends, quickly accustomed to each other, and even snapped really cutesy pictures. And I love this design here, this like splash page, where they really are two peas in a pod. Their hairstyles are very similar, their eyes, and I love that dreamy, starry makeup coming down from the character's face. And you can see she's really smitten with this gentleman. Well, finally came that day I realized, and there is the boyfriend kind of cringing over, ooh, having some pain there. And this is a great series right here. She says, "Oh, are you okay?" And the character says, "Oh, yeah, all right, just having some cramps. It sucks to be biologically female." Oh, and then and I love how her face just explodes. Her hairstyle's gone. She's out of sorts. Her mouth becomes this giant bar of steel, and the eyes are open, and those lines coming from the top like a real zing. And the O goes from a big small letter O to big capital letters. And that's how this kind, gentleman-like Buchanan was really a she, darn it life. And the character says, "But please continue to see me as male. I'm cross-playing anyway." And this is a really great scene. There is the character in color, and there she is in black and white. As she's laughing, her soul emanates from her body and flies up. She's really playing along well there. Really good scene. And this is how it ends. So I've long been asked that how Bishonen anime cons may in fact not even be a shonen, maybe like a little immature boy, someone who watches Pokemon or something like that. And I've been asked many times, what on earth happened to dear old Strife in this mishap? Strife was the character that was being dressed up as. And here's the answer. He's in basic training for the Air Force. Interesting how the author continues to refer to the character as a he. I are unlucky. It's so interesting to me and fascinating. The story that involves lots of great art, lots of great writing, very much in the manga aesthetic with gender confluence, sharing ideas about different identities, cosplaying, Japanese pop, Japanese terms like shonen and bishonen. And I would argue that even in English, that this was a very well crafted story. It was a very well established story, a good conflict and a resolution. So, to end my portion of the talk tonight, I want to leave you with a question. Does it surprise you that Sama was failing high school English? Here was this highly advanced writer, excellent storyteller, somebody who was consuming books at a very rapid rate. But there was a complete disconnect between what her interests were and what her literature was and her identities were and what her high school English teacher was really trying to get her to do in terms of basic literature and essay writing and so on. Now, of course, Sama does hold some responsibility there in terms of failing English, but I feel like there was a bridge that was missed in terms of connecting to Sama and the other high schoolers' real interests in literature, in culture, in language. But it just didn't align with the prescribed curriculum. And so I've been working very hard to help educators across the US and all over the world to help um, them understand that they're young people. They come to the classroom with literacy interests, with language interests, and we can use those as a bridge to all the classic literature that we know that we want to address. Of course, Shakespeare, of course, Mark Twain, and whatever it may be. There's a power there in manga that our young people already bring to the table. And I learned that through this experience at Martin Luther King High School. And it's one that I've been working to share over the years. I'll stop sharing my screen now. And if there are any questions or comments or anything that anybody would like to share, I'd be happy to field them now. As Nason points out in the chat, the artwork is really impressive. Isn't it incredible? I was really blown away by all the work that was produced at this one pod of a high school. Who knows what else is going on out there? I'm sure high school educators could reflect on all the different manga that their young people do bring into the classroom.
Thanks, Michael. As you said, any couple questions for Michael before we move on to the next? We can use either the raise your digital hand or use the stack system in chat, and therefore you can unmute yourself. Wait time is always different in Zoom. Yeah, did you have a question?
Oh, I have a lot of students who are interested in creating manga as well. And I'm just curious, beginning of your talk, you mentioned like this comic project is being internationalized. So is it like some kind of organization you are forming, or how did you identify group of people outside the US?
Yes, well, the organization is called the Comic Book Project, and basically we've identified partners outside of the US by who's shown interest. We haven't had, nationwide initiatives. It's been pockets of schools here or there, mostly aligned with our partnership with the US State Department starting in 2018. We were supposed to bring the project, and I was supposed to go to Japan for the first time. I've never been to Japan this past summer. Unfortunately, as Eric had said, so many things have been canceled to COVID, including that trip. But we do hope to make the connection in Japan pretty soon. One thing I would say, is for most of the programs that we work with, we do provide a curriculum and training for teachers. We give them materials in order for them to create their own comics. However, this comic book club that I shared with you from New York City, this high school club, they were quite different. They really didn't need any materials. They didn't need any training. They didn't really need anything from me and the organization except to promote and support their work through publications and presentations. They were already well versed in what it was to create a comic, how to create a comic, what manga was all about. They were teaching each other essentially, and they were using the literature that they were reading as inspiration for the kinds of manga that they would create.
Yeah, Michael, one of the things that really struck me in the example that you showed was her understanding of the tropes, right? Whether it's the mouth, whether it's the lack of a mouth, whether it's the eyes, all these things. And so to me, that seems like the obvious bridge, right? That those students understand these tropes. They may not be able to articulate a definition of a trope, right? But they know them, they know how to use them, right? And so I think if you could point that out, talk to them about their knowledge, what a trope is, then when they're reading Twain, then when they're reading Shakespeare, you can be like, oh, they're using tropes too, right? And in the same way that you're using tropes, and then you can start to identify those things. So instead of it being like this mysterious text, other texts are being built the same way you're building your own, and I think that would go a long way to helping their confidence and self-efficacy when thinking about literature.
I think you're right. And, from an educator's perspective, well, it really opens the floodgates for all the kinds of things you could do between comparing literature constructs, story arcs, character development. It's just a matter of allowing yourself and the students to be in that space. Sama's high school teacher was so adamant that, the time that she was spending drawing manga was a waste of time and taking her away from schoolwork. When I think if we were more open-minded, we would see that, wow, she is absolutely immersed in literature. How can I, as an adult who may not know anything about manga, use her interest to bridge to what I'm trying to teach? I think that Sama would have um, taken that opportunity to make that connection, but because her interests were shut out, she didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that reflects something that I'm always repeating with that Bell Hooks talks about in teachers needing to have epistemological humility, right? That would have been a perfect opportunity for her teachers to be like, I don't get what's going on here. Like, tell me, help me understand what's going on here. And in the process, they would be able to make connections that way. I think Nathan had a question in the chat that maybe, Michael, you can answer.
Yes, absolutely. Um, the idea of doujinshi, or publishing like fanzines, was absolutely a part of their culture. They were not just into manga for their own sketchbooks and for their own personal sharing. They really did want to share them outside of their school, and we helped them do that by printing uh, annual publications for them. So every year they had a printed manga. Um, we help promote panel discussions that the young people led, and they became like the authors, like we are now, the experts. People would ask them questions about their manga. I remember one that took place at the Barnes and Noble. It was a very motivational and inspiring opportunity for them. And while I don't believe that any of them became professional manga artists or writers, it did very much influence their lives. And at the time, it was a very important experience for them, and one that really did get them through high school.